be able to see myself. So good morning and welcome to Hokyoji's Sunday Dharma Talk. And it's good to see everyone here. And today I'm pleased to introduce Reverend Dokai Georgesen, who's the guiding teacher here at Hokyoji. Reverend Georgeson started practicing Zen with Dainin Katagiri Roshi in 1974, and he was ordained in 1984. He received transmission from Katagiri Roshi in 1989, and he's been the guiding teacher here at Hokyoji since 2003. And we're very glad to have him with us. We're grateful for his talk. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dokai. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgeson. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Well, there's just a few of us here today, so which is perfectly fine. And I was thinking to do something maybe a little different than our normal protocol. I was thinking to make it more of a discussion today. So I might have to rely on you to open up this sort of talk. I'm using a chapter from the book You Have to Say Something by Katagiri Roshi and edited by Steve Hagen. And it's a chapter called Opening Your Heart. I know I've talked on this before, maybe several occasions, maybe not the whole piece, but sections of it in various talks. And as I was preparing for this talk in the past several days, I felt like this particular chapter touched me again. So I'll just read the first paragraph of this chapter. For anyone living a spiritual life, the most important practice is open-heartedness. But dealing with life with compassion and kindness is not easy. We tend to live in terms of me. But if you're interested in the spiritual life, you'll have to consider more than just yourself. So I fundamentally agree with these statements he makes. And I think it's the case that at least everyone who's on this screen that I can see right now is we, those of us present right here in this meeting, have put a spiritual life in the foreground of our life. Actually, as I was reading it and rereading it, I thought, well, what do I know what spiritual means? So, I have this idea that I know what it means, without kind of thinking about it or any doubt. But after a while, after I was looking at it, I thought I should look it up. But I don't have a great big dictionary here in La Crosse, just a small one. But it says of having to do with the spirit or soul, and of course, not in a kind of not in a kind of a monetary way or getting ahead kind of way. It's how opening ourselves up to the world and all of its conditions and circumstances. And 3 years ago, I was asked to be on a board of directors of Buddhists in the who represent a larger community of mostly the United States, but a few from here and there from Mexico or Japan or Europe, a handful. It's called the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, and its members are primarily people practicing Soto Zen Buddhism. And the reason I'm mentioning that is it's put me in a place where I have to think more globally about the practice than just I won't say my little Hokyoji, but because Hokyoji is pretty big, but still my focus mainly was to, make sure that place is healthy and getting what it needs. But this other organization is looking at, I'd say, issues that I haven't really addressed so much, such as racism and people of color, and why most of us who practice Buddhism are white people. So it's examining that, and along with it, it's examining a lot of things I've never had to wrestle with. So this is probably why this passage struck me today, opening your heart, which says to me, well, it's like there's not like a plateau you can reach and say, okay, I've done it. I'm doing okay with it. There's always something more you can do. I was struck, I've mentioned this many times, but something I read that Mother Teresa said, the more you are able to give, the more you will be required to give. So I think that's part of what happens when we choose to live this kind of life. I'm going to skip around a little bit. But first, I'd like to maybe just go back and read this one more time. He says, for anyone living a spiritual life, he says, the most important practice. Now, this, he might in the book, with other things, also say, now the most important thing is this, and it'll be something totally different. But at least here he says, the most important practice is open-heartedness. And I mean, I just see that in the practice we do at Hokyoji, and I'm sure you see it at wherever you're practicing, is that we have to continuously open ourselves up to things we don't necessarily maybe want to open our hearts up. And then he adds the clause or sentence afterwards, but dealing with life with compassion and kindness is not easy. He doesn't even say sometimes not easy. He says it's just not easy. We tend to live in terms of me. But if you're interested in spiritual life, you will have to consider more than just yourself. when I was thinking of this, passage, I was thinking too of where I am now. I had my 70th birthday this summer. And I was thinking back when I was 30. And if I were to examine that person who was 30 years old, it, it would be quite a different person um, in many ways. Not only physically, that's obvious, but just where I was in the world and what I desired. And even though when I was 29, I decided to go to India and study Buddhism. And so I would have thought of myself as a spiritual person and had done a lot of practice since that was 1980. So I was practicing at the Minnesota Zen Center for 6 years, doing zazen, morning and night, all the retreats. As probably Henry was most of the time. And, but still, there was such a world of egoism in my head, that just was about me. And it was pretty intense. Even though it seemed like for the most part, I was a likable person, I guess. I'm not sure. That's how I see it. A little later, he goes down and says, usually we only live in the terms of the world we can see. And he says, he'll say later in the chapter, we also have to see the world that sees us, that we don't see. So they have to work together. So I'm not always sure I'm seeing that world very clearly. So I'll skip around. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Oh, okay. I'll pick that up. We tend to ignore the world that sees us. This is not the world you think you see or hear. Nevertheless, you are supported by this world. It is actually the world as it is before you are conscious of it, before you form some idea about it. If you emphasize yourself, you will completely forget this world that sees, holds, and sustains you. And I wanted to add something to that. The world that sees, holds, and sustains you, and add on, also corrects you. This world also corrects you or admonishes you and tells you when you're off the mark here. And that too is compassion, but is also, I go back and say it's also the world that holds and sustains you, the world that corrects you, because you might be on an unsustainable path if you are just concerned with our own welfare. So he gives the example, for instance, since I am the head of a Zen group, even though my life is really not my life. My life is really the life of all the group. So very naturally, even though I don't like it, we set up a schedule for zazen and lectures and retreats and so forth. And I have to follow it. In other words, the group has set me in a certain way of life. In terms of my ego, I don't like it. I'd rather just do what I want to do and not always follow the schedule. Well, that's kind of true. for me at Hokyoji. And right now, relative to the schedule we had at MZMC, it's a fairly light schedule. It's just morning zazen now, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and a little later on Sunday. We don't do evening zazen, at least not yet. Or we did, but we stopped. But I found myself yesterday, I had sort of a not so good of a night. I found myself just not doing zazen yesterday morning. It's Oktoberfest here in La Crosse. Do you know about that, Brigitte? Yeah, you probably do, Henry, also. So I guess La Crosse is a pretty big German town. It's a pretty big drinking town, I'll tell you that. But they really take Oktoberfest seriously here. So people were up all night long yelling and creating, especially the young men. Kind of wonder where they get that energy. I guess I had it. Or even why. Why do they have to shout and shout and shout till 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning? Kind of think, well, you could be using your energy in maybe a little more constructive way. But I was the same. So he goes on to say, we all feel this way from time to time. We say, don't tell me what I should do. But we can't take care of our lives very well just based on our own personal preferences. There's the big world that sees you. You can't ignore this world. So even though I might not like it sometimes, the group provides me with this great opportunity to sit zazen. So when the opportunity appears, I feel grateful I can sit zazen with all beings. So I am going to talk a bit about zazen, maybe right toward the end. But before I do that, maybe I can ask you, I'll read one more paragraph. We all have memories and habits and patterns in our lives, and sometimes, even though we feel good, they don't allow us to open our heart. Intellectually, we know we should, but emotionally, it seems like we can't. Still, you can do it. Strictly speaking, openness of heart is beyond all speculation. It is the total picture of your life as you live it from day to day. If you want to practice compassion, you must accept simultaneously the world you see and the world that sees you. When you just sit down in zazen, you can feel something, even though you don't know what it is. It just arises right here, right now. Gotta get up and get a Kleenex. My nose is dripping, and I don't have one close by, so I'll be back in a moment. Meanwhile, can you all reflect on this? And I'd like to hear what you have to say even right now. I'll be back in 30 seconds, maybe less. Okay, can anyone feel something arising or being evoked from anything I've said so far, or not? You have something, Brigitte?
Well, just a second. Excuse me. The microphone. Apologize. I'm struggling with the microphone. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear. We can hear.
So, I mean, the story about Oktoberfest is really funny because I think usually it was only celebrated in Munich. In Munich, which is a big city in the southern part of Germany, and now I guess it's all over. But it has its origin in Munich, and people are wearing those costumes.
Yeah.
And last night I saw people here in Bonn also, wearing these costumes. It's a bit weird. So I wonder it is celebrated in La Crosse as well. So
It is. They wear these costumes.
Yeah. It's a bit funny, isn't it?
It was very funny.
A bit weird also.
It was, well, this really struck me the other day. I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but this very young woman who was very buxom, but she had this outfit on where it was funny because you just wouldn't wear that kind of outfit, I don't think. But it was, and just to see her like so young, like a college age woman, it was kind of striking. It was in the grocery store, so yeah, but and plus all these other costumes that are interesting. But they closed the whole street down, and I couldn't even drive my car around. Anyway, that's I don't want to get too long on Oktoberfest, but it's the first time I've been here in La Crosse. I'm usually at Hokyoji at this time, but anyway. Well, that's it. I mean, I don't want to go on about that, but it just left me a little cranky in the morning. So I decided I'm taking Zazen off. I'll just sit there and stew. But I guess that's part of opening your heart. Huh? Well, anyone else? I mean, I can go on, but I'd rather have it be kind of a mutual. You have something there, Kosen? Looks like you do. We're not hearing anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. This is kind of a half-formed thought, but on the topic of like doing what you want versus following a schedule, or maybe I could say having a narrower and more like self-centered approach to life and all the little choices versus something more open. Something I notice for me that's pretty interesting is that ego, or whatever it is, the parts of me that sort of want to do what I want and are motivated that way, believe that like doing what I want will feel good and that it's a kind of freedom. There's this idea that, I want to be free. I want to be free to do what I want. But what I find is it kind of turns out a little more the opposite. The more that I'm caught up in doing what I want, actually, the less free I seem to feel. And the more open I am and just kind of more oriented around doing what needs to be done with a little less me in it, the more free that I end up feeling, when I'm living that way. However, I still get caught up in it anyway. Even though I experience that and see it, it's like I still do it. I haven't abandoned. I haven't given up. Like my ego hasn't given up yet. That's all. I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay. It brought up a couple of things that actually he says in the chapter. He says, whatever the future brings, we have to continue to seek a world based on the practice of openness of heart. Perfect openness of heart brings into life flexibility, tenderness, and magnanimity. This can't be fully explained conceptually. You can't put your finger on it, but you can feel it. To live this way is what you're really looking for. So I think when you say, Colson, that sometimes if we could just like do what we wanted, we have this idea that, oh, it's just going to be great. I remember Henry telling the story after session, he would go someplace. I think it was, I don't know if it was the High Shaft or not in New Albany, but looking forward to eating this hamburger. I mean, I might be not saying this correctly, but it was hamburger and French fries or something. You know, you don't get that kind of food during session, so it's like, oh boy, is this going to be great? You know? And he would say it was always kind of like not kind of a letdown. You know? Plus, your stomach is probably going to feel some indigestion. In any event, after I think it was our Hokyoji, maybe it was Jewel Mirror session, Kosen and I did go out for a hamburger. And I had said in that session, you know, toward the end, you know, don't start thinking about all the things you want to be doing after session's over, because it's not going to be that great anyway, even if you imagine it to be really great. But then after Kosen and I had our hamburger and French fries, you know, I'm going to take issue with you. That was a really good hamburger. Of course, I think it was more, we had a very nice conversation along with it. So, so I like this thing. To live this way is what you're really looking for. Really realize it. Okay. But it also brought up another passage that he says at the end. We do not need an explanation. No matter how long we ask about why we are so egotistic, we will never find a clear answer. Nevertheless, right in the middle of this no answer, your life goes on. Even though we don't understand it, we can all take a deep breath. We can all practice forgetting ourselves. Forgetting yourself does not mean destroying yourself. Forgetting yourself is just to see yourself from a different angle, the way the world sees you. Then you will not just see your little ego self, but your true self, your big self, which includes all beings. So that kind of that resonated with me with regard to what you said, Colson. Also, because just to forget yourself doesn't mean we're destroying ourselves. And I've looked back, you know, over some of the decisions I've made, and some of them were quite painful. But I remember, you know, once really falling in love with a woman. And it was pretty darn painful, in the long run. But when we were breaking up, you know, I said, well, why did I do this? Why did I do this? You know, or why did I let myself like fall into this so deeply? But, you know, and I would think about it, you know, I don't think I really had a choice. You know, it was like you just needed something. You needed to find something out. And so Of course, it's, when it comes out, winds up being kind of painful. You kind of think more carefully about it the next time, but it might happen. But still, and then it might even not make a difference. But still, but it that's what I mean by what I think he means. That we don't destroy ourselves. We don't. There's some things we need, and we can't let those things go. Even in Buddhism time, there were requisites of the holy life. There were some things the monks needed to have to practice. Well, anybody else have questions? I would say rebuttals. Yes, Kyoku.
Well, I continue to appreciate Katagiri, and I'm really glad that you brought it forth, because I'm teaching a class and practicing with the Four Noble Truths. And this week is all about penetrating the truth of suffering. And I've really been engaging with it, or trying to engage with it, but this struggle that we all recognize of, well, we have good intent, but doing it is a whole different thing. And it is, I've done enough practice now so that at least with some things, I've been dissuaded by paying attention to what actually happens when I do what I want, and have a chance to observe how long the impact of that lasts for me and for others around me. So it's just tying in, I guess, very nicely with my own practice. I'm remembering a story, I think, from A Path with Heart. I'm forgetting the author's name, but probably most of you know it. Anyway, he was practicing in India with his teacher. And apparently one day his teacher asked his supporters or helpers to please buy up all of a particular type of sweet, a tea cake or something that they could find. And then he sat down and went about mindfully eating it until it was completely consumed. And I thought, really, that's that's what I feel like I'm doing with my own suffering, is to really eat it, to really sit there and observe what the actual experience of indulging in my own wants is like, at a very granular, kind of calm, supported way. So I'll stop.
Okay. Well, it was reminded of something you said, like digesting our suffering. Yesterday I was reading the news online, CNN, and I saw an article. It was a review of a book. You know, I might not have even read it before, but I wrote it down because I was going to bring it up in the talk, and then I decided not to. So I took a little sheet of paper with the author and the name of the book. It's out of reach right now, but I went to my my other place where I keep books to buy list. And anyway, it was. I'll look it up if anybody wants to know. But all I remember, I think it was written by a Black man, and his first name was Clint, and I don't remember the other name. But and the title of the book is how. I'm going to get most of it not right, but it's like how the word of history is told, something like that. And then the second part is addressing the issue of slavery in the United States or in America. And, I probably wouldn't even have read the review or read the book or even the book review, 10 years ago. But now I will get the book, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it through because it's probably going to be so horrible to read. What I saw in the two things from the review that stuck out for me was he visited this place, and again, I don't have all that detail, but it's somewhere where the history of slavery is, museum somewhere, and they have the heads of 16 Black men who were leaders in kind of a revolt against slavery, and they were all beheaded. And there's a museum where the heads of these people are in kind of placed in a garden, something like that. There's a picture of it. And the other, I won't go on about this, but the other thing that this author brings out in the book is that one reason why America is one of the wealthiest nations in the world is because of slavery. He said you had, I don't know the number, whatever million it was, of free labor for how many years, and that's one reason why it becomes such an economic giant. And the other thing that was news to me is the mayor of New York City wanted to succeed along with the South because the slavery business was so profitable in New York City. This is going to be a book. I don't know if I'm going to make it through it or not, but it feels like I need to educate myself about this. So this is kind of where this talk is coming from, to opening myself up to things I never thought I would need to open up to. I didn't even know they were there to open up to.
I think Dokai, I have gone to similar experience with the whole idea of white privilege, because I belong also to a Unitarian church, and the Unitarian are kind of socially active, and they're going through a whole thing of white privilege, and I thought it's amazing how deep that issue is, because I always thought, yeah, I know, but you guys, there are layers to it that I had to discover, and just, and I can put myself more now in Black people's position, and the pain and burden these people have to carry just in daily life because of color is heartbreaking. It's really, and I'm amazed at myself how shallow my understanding was of this issue, and how, as a white person, you're kind of novocaine really to that issue. Yeah. And it takes a real conscious overtime effort to dig down and to find out, just like you were saying, Dokai, how this country has benefited from slavery and how incredibly painful it is to be a Black person in America. So it's very surprising the depth that topic has for me now, white privilege.
Yeah. That's thank you, Henry. That's exactly where our national organization is going. I think a Buddhist now, they're really looking at this issue. Why is it, are we just 99% white or people who practice Buddhism in America, Zen Buddhism? So,
And the Unitarian Church is the same way.
yeah.
Here in Mankato, we have a membership of 130 people, and there's not a single Black person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mankato has quite a few Black people, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's just these things are, and there's also our indigenous folks.
Right. That's another issue. Is part of the ceremony at the Unitarian Church. Every Sunday, it is acknowledged that we're on land that used to belong to Native people. I have a hobby farm south of Mankato, and for over 10 years, it was part of the Winnebago Indian Reservation. Mm-hmm. Before the Winnebago people, actually is a tribe that came away from Wisconsin and was pushed by other tribes west. And they were agriculture kind of oriented people. But when the uprising was in 1862, these people who did nothing to any single white person were also kicked off the land, and the land was taken, and they were shipped down to Iowa and then to Nebraska, and there are reservations to this very day of very poor soils and so forth. That's a whole other kind of thing. I think one thing that's interesting how new and ignorant we are of our history when it pertains to the Native people and also to the Black people. About 2 years ago, I spent some time in Germany. And one thing, what the Germans did during the Second World War was horrendous. But one thing that is really notable is how they came, every aspect in school, when you walk on the sidewalks, there are actually stones embedded that indicate where somebody was hurt or killed, or in front of houses that used to belong to Jewish people. I mean, the whole society has really done an incredible job of looking at that and making it public. Kids have to go to concentration camps and see it. And on television, you see all these, Second World War movies, and there's nothing hidden on that whole topic. And I think in this country, we're kind of shy to go into that. We have done some effort. I've noticed in Minnesota that some out in Western Minnesota, where there used to be Indian attacks, that now they reinterpret the signs, and they speak more kindly of the Native people as not being all wrong. Mm-hmm. And the white people, were entitled, and the great injustice was done to the white people. So there are some modest efforts done, but we have a long way to go on that.
Thank you. Yeah, my father grew up on a farm where bordered the Winnebago Reservation, and those people it was in Nebraska.
Yeah.
They probably were moved there, and the land wasn't too fertile.
Yeah.
So,
but Dokai, an interesting topic is, how has suffering changed for you from when you began the practice How do you suffer differently now?
Well, someone asked me that question a few years ago, and I responded, and I think it's true that my suffering seems deeper, but my joy is also. So they kind of go hand in hand. My happiness, it's I don't have the ups and downs, emotional roller coaster rides. So, but just like you stated, Henry, I grew up not even knowing these things, not even a single thought about it. We had a few Black people in our high school, and we were in an area that had quite a few Native people, but Sioux City, Iowa, named after Sioux, I guess, but anyway. Yeah. So anyway, let me just read this last paragraph before I go. I remember in my previous lectures, I didn't read this paragraph, but this time I read it, and it made a difference for me, and I think it made a difference in the practice that Katagiri Roshi did. And so I'll read it. It's emotional. When I was 14 years old, my mother died. The world seemed completely dark. I felt there was no hope for me. Day after day, I cried in my bed. It seemed that the more I cried, the more I tried to reach for her, the further from me she became. So I cried even more. I cried constantly. But all of a sudden, I stopped crying. I felt my mother had come into my heart. I can't explain it in words, but there was no longer any separation between me and my mother. She was in my heart. So I kind of maybe knew something about that from Katagiri, but this time it really, that could have really informed his whole life, about practice. Just losing your mother when you're 14 years old. Dogen lost his parents when he was very young too. Well, I was going to talk about Zazen, but I think I'm going to let that pass for now. Because he does mention, I'll read you the last paragraph. This goes for you too. This is you. Oh, there is you. There is you. And then there is the world. If there is even a small gap between them, we fill it with thought. As long as we create this gap, we will never understand. But in truth, capitalized, there is no gap between you and the world. To become one with your object is true openness of heart. This is why we do that. So this practice of sitting still can help us understand, I think, to open our hearts to things we feel are impossible, almost impossible to do. And yet it gives us some peace and and knowing that this is really what we want to do with our lives. Then it comes down to, and this is what we talk about quite a bit in Sesshin, is, okay, how do we really do Zazen? Again, and he's got a pretty nice passage from the previous chapter I was going to share, but I'll save that for another time. We've all heard it before. Just don't think so hard. Or maybe since I got 8 minutes after this, I'll read it. To merge with Zazen is not so easy. It requires strong determination. In other words, you have to completely throw yourself away in Zazen. Dogen says to throw away good and bad, right and wrong, to have no designs on becoming awakened. When you become one with Zazen through and through, there is no attachment. This is peaceful, harmonious mind. This must be your aim, otherwise you won't experience Zazen as it really is. Of course, many things and ideas come up in Zazen, but those things and ideas are like bubbles. The moment you meddle with them, you immediately provoke a sense of irritation, hatred, depression, and so forth. Oneness with Zazen implies no meddling. It means no idea of practice, no idea of practicing. If you truly do Zazen very naturally, the idea of a practicer and the ideas of Zazen will drop off. Okay, unless anyone has any concluding remark, we can maybe end for the day. Okay. I wonder if Kosen is close by. He is close by. Would you like to say the concluding remarks, Kosen? I don't think we can hear you. We can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah.
If I do this for one more year, I'll probably get good at it. Thank you for your talk, and thanks everyone for being here. Just a few announcements. I want to give some announcements about upcoming events at Hokyoji. At the end of October, from October 28th to 31st, we're hosting a men's retreat with a couple of wonderful teachers who I'm sorry my brain is not recalling their names right now, but I'm excited about this retreat, and if you're interested or if you know anyone who might be interested, please go to our website and read about it there. In November, we have two weekends events. One is our Caring for the Land weekend beginning November 12th, and that will be focused on land stewardship. And the following weekend is our work weekend, and that has a kind of broader focus on just doing work practice. And those, you pay for those events with your labor. There's no monetary charge for those events. It's always a nice time. It's just a nice time to gather and we will feed you. We usually have wonderful food. So consider coming to Hokyoji in November for that. Then I've got all the things I usually say about, supporting us financially. There's a donation link in the chat, and we are always grateful for your support. We rely on the support of the broad Sangha. That's what makes Hokyoji possible. So thank you. Also, we need your support just spreading the word about Hokyoji. So if you have social media, do all of those social media things with Hokyoji, please. Liking and sharing and all of that stuff. Thank you. I think that's all of the housekeeping. So let's close with the 4 vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you next time.